One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. So I always have a lot of fun whenever I learn something new. Maybe that's just me being dorky. Maybe that's just who I am. I don't even really know how to explain it. But whenever I find something that someone else is doing that's super, super cool, I have to tell you about it. And of course, it's related to podcasting, but it's also related to you growing your audience in a really fun way. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? All right, so right here from the top, I have to tell you, this was not my idea, okay? I'm a firm believer in giving credit where credit is due, and this was not my idea. This comes from hanging out with the folks over at Squadcast. So shout out to Ariel and Rock and Zach. Y'all are so awesome, and I love being a part of the Squadcast family. This is the platform that I use for all of my podcast interviews. I've been with them for oh my gosh, it's been 1.5 years now that I've been using their software, and it just keeps getting better and better. But I'm also a part of, they have this like behind the scenes for people that are in the Squadcast community, and it's called Squad Pod. So I'm a Squad Podder. I don't know if that's really the way that you say it, but I'm part of the Squad Pod. I've actually done some beta testing with them as they were rolling out the new features that they have with Dolby and just really cool things. They're awesome people. But what I've seen behind the scenes of what they're doing, I just got so excited. I was like, okay, I got to steal this idea because I think it's so good. So they have a podcast that's called Between Two Mics, And normally it's just podcast industry experts that they have come on. And this is a shout out, like Rock, Zach, Ariel, if y'all are listening, I need to be on this podcast. I would love to come chat with y'all about podcasting because y'all are my people. But what they also do is they have just the between two mics aspect is Zach and Rock, who are the co-founders of the company. I'm going to link to an episode I did with them last year that was all about Squadcast and their journey. It was a really fun episode. Like I said, I'm really excited to know these people and be able to share in our nerdiness about podcasting. But it's not often that you really get to know founders of a company. And it's just been such a cool journey to really understand their passion behind podcasting because they really want to help independent podcasters get their message out there, grow their shows, and reach more people. So that's why today's concept is really special to me and why I'm so excited to share it with you, because what they started doing on their show Between Two Mics is called podcast ad swapping. No, it's kind of funny, like just like a squad pod. It's podcast swapping. You're swapping. Okay, this is so totally not related at all, but I just thought of swapping spit. Remember, this might be the most country term ever, but I remember my mom used to say, she didn't say this to me, but I think that her mom used to say something about, oh yeah, they're just swapping spit. That means making out, y'all. Like, is this just the most country thing ever, or is this just ridiculous? Anyway, I just thought when I said they're swapping spit, y'all, I need to keep these comments to myself. But here's how it works. So what is a podcast ad swap? This is simply where you can record between 30 to 60, oh no, sorry. You could do 30 to 60, or you could do 30 to 90 seconds of an audio clip, and it's going to air on someone else's show. So you could submit an audio clip for the Profit Podcast, and you can say, hey, this is so-and-so from the name of your podcast. And we're going to get into today's episode of the Profit Podcast. But before we get there, I wanted to tell you about a show that I think you would really like. And then you could insert the reasons why my listeners would love to listen to your show. And then you could end it with like, okay, let's get into today's episode. Boom, done. That is essentially what a podcast ad swap is. So it's not a branded piece of content where it's a sponsored ad, right? You're not paying to do it, but it's a way for you to ask other podcasters. You could say, hey, I created this audio clip and it's custom to you and your audience. And it's just a plug, a very short plug, right? It's 30 to 90 seconds. And I wanted to see if you wanted to swap where you could do an audio clip from my show and I would do one for your show. Now, let me break this down for you. Let me break this down on a practical level of why this is so dang genius. Multiple reasons. One, when I talk about something on the show, if you've been around here for a while, like we know each other, then you likely will take my word for it whenever I tell you that someone else's podcast is really good or it's for the benefit of this type of listener, right? It's pretty, I guess, what's the word? Like it's established that you come here to get information about podcasting. So what's even better and what takes it a step further is whenever I bring someone onto my show and I say, hey, this person is a great guest, you should go check them out. You know that they've been validated, they've been vetted, and I'm not going to recommend someone that I don't truly believe is a good fit for this audience. But what's even cooler about the podcast ad swaps is it doesn't take 45 minutes of me interviewing you and sitting down, like, let's make our schedules work. How's this going to happen? Like, you could do this essentially anytime. You have 30 to 90 seconds free. Record your clip. You could add a little music behind it, and then you could submit it to a podcast that you would say, hey, like, here's a quick clip. If you want to play this at the very beginning of your show, I would really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow my audience. When someone hears your voice on someone else's podcast, it piques my interest. I guess I can only speak from my from my perspective, right? I can't tell you what you feel when you hear someone else's, podcast, but I listened to a few episodes of Between Two Mics where they did this, and I was so intrigued. Not only because I get to hear about these other podcasts that I may have never heard about otherwise, even if Zach and Rock mentioned it, they're like, hey, these podcasts are awesome. You got to go check it out. Well, what if I'm busy? What if I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't have a chance to go to the show notes. I have a chance to do that. But if I hear someone's voice and I think, oh man, I like their voice. I like their message. Like, ooh, they have some chill music in the back. I think I want to go check them out. You're that much more likely from a marketing perspective to make a consumer, a listener who's listening to someone else's show, come over to your show because it immediately validates, right? Because Zach and Rock have already pre-approved. They're not going to put shows on there that they either don't know about or they don't have a direct connection with. Like, they're not going to promote something that they don't think would be a great fit for their audience. But it also gives that stamp of like, oh my gosh, like I could hear immediately, I would love to go check out this show. Or maybe, oh, I can't stand that person's voice. I don't even want to think about the number of times people have been like, oh my gosh, I had to turn off that Crystal girl because her accent was way too much for me. I know they're out there and I just don't even worry about it because it's just, it's the way life goes when you're a podcaster. Some people will love your voice. Some people will hate your voice. Some people will say it's like nails on a chalkboard. Well, those aren't my people. Those aren't the people that come back every single week. So I don't waste my time, my precious, I guess, efforts on trying to get those people to come back. I want to talk to the people that want to be here every single week. So this is really fun. I always get the question, how can I grow my show? How can I get in front of new listeners? And this is a really fun way to make it happen. So here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm actually going to try this out on the Profit Podcast. I can't guarantee how many we're going to select and how often we're going to do this, but I thought, why not? What a fun way to grow the community. I haven't decided. I'm like, well, maybe we could do this for the dynamic content and your show could be featured in front of all of the other shows that are in, or all the other episodes that are a part of the Profit Podcast. Y'all, that's over 277 at this point. It's actually more than that with the bonus episodes that don't even have a number. We have so many episodes of this podcast. So I think that that's what we're going to do. So listen up. Very, very important. I'm going to have directions on how this is going to work. So go to crystalprofit.com/episode 277. That is the show notes for this episode. I'm going to put directions on how you can have the opportunity, because I'm not going to promise everybody they're going to get a spot, but if you want to be featured on the Profit Podcast in a podcast ad swap, go to the show notes. I'm using this platform called SpeakPipe, which I've actually used to, answer questions on other people's podcast, or, ask a question, say, hey, can you answer my question? And I need you to follow these directions because it's very important that you follow everything that's in the show notes. I'm going to tell you again real fast kind of what the expectation is, and then you can go to the show notes and figure it out. So here's how it's going to work. You can record an audio clip anywhere between 30 to 90 seconds. I think it will cut you off if you go past 90 seconds anyway, so don't be long-winded. Maybe write out some notes before you get started. But you can say, and I'm just going to insert your name here. I'm going to pretend that I'm doing this for the Between Two Mics episode. So this is what I would say. And I'm actually, as soon as I get done recording this, I'm going to go record my clip to send to them. And I'm also going to put in the show notes how you can submit your show to them as well if you're a Squadcaster. So here we go. Hi, this is Crystal Profit from the Profit Podcast, and I wanted to share something fun with you today before we dive into this week's episode of Between Two Mics. If you're an entrepreneur that's been looking for ways to really make deeper connections with your audience and future customers, then I encourage you to come check out the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs all about how to start, launch, and market their own podcast. This show was really created to be the shortcut from Googling for hours and trying to figure out the steps you need to take to actually streamlining it and making a shortcut to getting your podcast launched and ready in under 30 days. So make sure you go to crystalprofit.com/podcast to check out the Profit Podcast. Okay, let's get into today's episode. End scene. That's what I always feel like when I do one of those tutorials and I'm like, wait, I don't know what to say at the end. So that was the end. I wanted to make sure that you end with something like, okay, let's get into today's episode, because that will fade out and go directly into the episode that's airing for that day. So you got some homework. If you would love the opportunity to be featured on the Profit Podcast, go to the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 277. You're going to have all the details there on what you need to do, how to submit everything to SpeakPipe. And also you can go check out Squadcast and what they're doing for their show. That way, maybe this could be a great opportunity for you to get your podcast in front of other people. But that's all I have for you today. So once again, show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 277. And make sure if you're just now getting here, you're like, oh my gosh, this sounds incredible. This sounds amazing. Well, we try to really give back to the community here and support podcasters. So if you have not already, hit that follow button, hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this show. That way you're notified every time we put out a brand new episode every Tuesday and Thursday. And we throw in some fun little surprises for those that are subscribed to the show. But that's all I have for you today. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners, thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.